Hello, I'm Chuck Martin, and welcome to the Voices of the Internet of Things. With me today is Micha Risling, Senior Vice President of Marketing and Business Development and Head of Automotive Business Unit at Valens Automotive, which provides advanced automotive semiconductor technology. Micha has been Director of Strategy and Marketing at Saifun Semiconductors, Marketing Chair at HDBase Alliance, and has held various roles at Valens before his current position. Micha focuses on providing the technological capabilities required behind the connected cars of the future. Thanks for joining us here, Micha.
Thank you for having me.
So tell I know that your company has been in automotive for some time and you've gotten some very, very large investment. Tell me the state of the connected car today.
Well, connected car is a concept that is gaining a lot of momentum in the last few years, especially with respect to the future of autonomous vehicles. So everyone is dealing with this concept of connected vehicles. Most of the people are mainly using this term with respect to connectivity to the Ethernet, to the external world. But the car is becoming a data center on wheels, which automatically means that connectivity inside the vehicle is as important as connectivity to the outside. And the existing technologies or solutions are simply not capable to address the requirements of this new data center kind of approach.
And you're talking beyond, basically beyond self-driving cars. You're talking about all the infotainment and so forth?
Exactly. So normally people are referring to autonomous because they believe that this is the paradigm shift that the industry is going through, but they need also to realize that the huge revolution is not just limited to the autonomous. It's also infotainment because, people will have more spare time while they're driving or not driving, sitting actually in the cars, and which means that they expect the car makers to offer them more displays, higher quality. We're now talking about 4K, for instance, more sensors, more cameras, more option in terms of bring your own device. And all in all those elements requires connectivity.
So what is Valens Automotive? You're based in Israel?
Yeah, we are a company based in Israel. It's not just automotive. It's a company that deals with two markets. The first one was, which is still one of the markets that we are playing at, is the professional audio-video industry, where we developed a technology called HDBase T, which is a market leader in this space. And automotive is an initiative we started a few years ago. We are using or taking some of the know-how and the technologies that were developed for the professional AV, and we bring them into the automotive space.
So what does that look like at CES, for example, at the Samsung display as well as the Harman display? They were showing screens, essentially that one screen replaced all the rear view mirrors in a car.
Yes. So, there are different use cases for screens, and everyone now tries to be very, very creative with respect to how display connectivities are being used. So Samsung, Harman, in that case, were showing how, displays can use the traditional analog-based kind of displays, whether they are instrumental clusters or even mirrors. All of this stuff is going to be replaced by displays. And we were lucky to actually be part of this demo by providing the connectivity that allows those displays to be connected to a centralized computing device and supporting the new requirements, especially in terms of bandwidth, distance, and a lower cost.
Yeah, I'm not sure many people are familiar, but can you talk about the amount of wire that's required in a car today?
Yes. Wiring in general is the third heaviest element in the car today. And if you look just around the corner, you will see immediately that this issue is going to increase dramatically unless they are going for a new concept. This is, by the way, and this is something we used at CES. We refer to it as the elephant in the car. The way we see it, it's like trying to take an elephant and try to squeeze it or to put it into a small car. This is the issue of connectivity in the car, because given all the elements that we mentioned, now if you need to connect them together, and if you're going to continue and use the same techniques, concept, technologies that are being used today, it will simply will not fit.
So in the future, will it be wireless or will it just be fewer wires?
It will be both of them. The approach that we are taking is to go for fewer wires, because many of the use cases will not be able to use wireless, given the fact that there is a need for high quality, high bandwidth in a very demanding environment in terms of the interferences and the noises. Not to mention, especially when you go to autonomous driving, the requirements in terms of security and safety. So wireless will coexist with wired technologies, and our challenge is to, as you said, is to reduce the number of cables and connectors, and of course the overall cost and weight. And this is exactly what we are doing. The technology that we developed allow the manufacturers to support the different needs that we just touched upon, with fewer cables, lower cost, and with maximum flexibility.
Today, when a consumer gets into a car, very, very frequently the phone is involved in part of the connectivity. In the future, does the phone go away as a requirement for the car?
No, phone, at least in the near future, would be one of the bring your own device kind of element. It's another quite important, quite common multimedia device that you need to support. And you need, but the trick is that phone should somehow be part of the entire system. Okay, it's not just a dedicated device. You would like the content that you have on the phone to be distributed and to be demonstrated in all or most of the displays. You would like that the display will be able to be accessed, or the phone will be able to be accessed from, for instance, the head unit or the main display. And some of the technology is already available. Some of them are already in use, like CarPlay, for instance.
So what are you doing with? I know you're doing some work with Samsung, Qualcomm, and so forth. What are you doing with companies like that?
So again, the challenge is quite huge. If you look at what the industry is dealing with, it really requires companies to join forces, to think outside of the box. There's a lot of innovation involved in that. And when the guys are trying to put the future architectures together, they find themselves dealing with issues that are quite new to this industry. By the way, this is the reason why this industry is starting to bring more and more innovation. They're trying to work with some newcomers that bring innovation and know-how from different industries. Valens with our HDBase technology is a great example. And we need to partner with other either semiconductor companies or tier ones or OEM companies, to make sure that the solutions that we provide will be the one that will address those needs. I'll give you an example. You mentioned Qualcomm. For instance, at CES show, we had a joint demonstration with Qualcomm, in which we showed, for instance, how their smart antenna can be connected with our technology. How, for instance, they have like a storage device, an SSD disk, that can also be connected to the main processor by using PCI Express technology that is being tunneled over the HDBase technology. Now, this is important because what we are doing, we are taking kind of native interfaces that are already inside of some of the chipsets. Some of those chipsets were originally designed for the cellular market. And now the interest is take those chipsets and use them for the automotive industry. And the challenge is, how do you use that when the form factor is no longer a very small phone, but rather a large car? Okay, so this is where connectivity or new connectivity is needed, because suddenly you need a way to extend the distance. You're no longer talking about two devices that are a few centimeters apart. Now you need to support a few meters between those two elements. And this is, for instance, one of the demonstrations that we showed at CES.
So how does an automaker decide how to deal with this? I mean, you've got Ford, Chrysler, GM. I mean, all the major dealers, BMW and so forth. How do they decide which way to go? Because you and Samsung and Qualcomm, you're all really technology companies, not auto companies. How do they pick which way to go?
Yeah, first of all, it's a challenge for them. As I said, it's a kind of a leapfrog for them, moving from what they did so many years to what the innovation is expecting them to do. There are different approaches, but all in all, I think what we see, what all the automakers today are kind of in a scouting phase, in which they look for innovation, they look for new solutions that can address the needs. It doesn't mean that one solution will fit all, but definitely we see a need for innovation.
So how do you, it seems like the speeds of the industries are different. For example, the speed in technology development is very high, but the lead time for building cars is very, very long. How does that match up?
Yeah, first of all, I think that the industry understands that this somehow should change. You cannot just, keep the original pace simply because the requirements are such that you need to use the best technology that you have. And just like 7 years, most of the technologies, I wouldn't say are becoming obsolete, but you are in a way missing a lot of the development and innovation. So one of the challenges is, by the way, to reduce the design and the introduction phase. Companies, for instance, like Tesla, this is something that they are extremely proud of. They are coming with those beta releases and stuff like that. Concept that if you would have mentioned it in the auto industry a few years ago, they will claim that you don't understand the industry. So this first of all, this has to be changed, and I think we already see that changing. At the same time, this also, the change itself puts a lot of challenges on the industry and also on the suppliers, because now you have less time for testing. The development cycle, it's a little bit shorter than what we used to, so they are putting a lot of pressure on the suppliers to provide a solution at a much earlier stage. And there is one issue or one requirement that no one is able or willing to compromise on, and this is safety. And unfortunately, safety is now becoming a little bit even more important, simply because you start to deal with autonomous. And unless you will do it right, there is a lot of risk associated with that. So this is a challenge.
So how does this look over the next few years? Is it really the connected entertainment systems that start to be visible to consumers way before the autonomous vehicle?
Yeah, I think those two will go in parallel. If you look at the roadmaps, the intention is to introduce autonomous vehicle. Again, the discussion is with respect to what level will be presented when, but everyone understands that all the car makers will have some level of autonomous vehicles in the near future. And of course, this will come together with better infotainment, better entertainment. Also, you can consider that also in the context of electrical vehicles, which are also part of the revolution. And again, what is unique in that sense that it doesn't matter which way you go, it needs better connectivity. And that's key. So from our perspective, as a solution provider, it doesn't really matter whether it's infotainment or autonomous. It requires advanced connectivity solution. We try to provide the best-in-class connectivity, one that is flexible enough to support cameras and sensors as well as displays, and allow that to be connected over a lowest cost cable or channel with the highest quality. Okay, and this is something that you cannot compromise. You cannot say, well, maybe I can do the distance, but unfortunately I cannot support the highest resolution. No, that's not the case. Because from a user perspective, the guy who is going to sit in the car, he doesn't really care about what is the hidden technology that allow him to see the movie or the content. He wants to get the content at the highest quality, and he expects that the infrastructure in the car will be such that will allow him to enjoy it. So that's, as I said, there are many challenges that needs to be addressed well.
So do your company focus mostly on inside the car connectivity or outside as well?
Inside, we provide the connectivity that allows the infrastructure inside the car to meet the requirements. Some of our devices, some of our chipset are also integrated into, for instance, the antennas that, of course, are communicating with the outside world. But our main domain is in-vehicle connectivity. And this is important, especially with the fact that this specific domain is not getting enough attention. Okay. Well, I hope that now whoever listens to this podcast really understands the challenges and the requirements. So for us as a solution provider, it really puts us in a unique situation where we are one of the few companies that are really addressing this part of the market.
So in the future, for totally connected cars, is 5G required, which is, you probably know, is launching in the U.S. later this year?
Yeah, 5G will surely provide some benefits that I'm sure that the user will appreciate. In most cases, you will be able to obtain better speed than what you're going to have in your office or in your home. And this is great because, if you look at where the cars are going, this in a way will be our perfect living room. You will have, first of all, you have time. You will have a car that is going to be equipped with the most advanced displays and speakers. And if you combine that with enough internet speed, this is heaven.
So where does failure play in all of this? Because we all know, since there's been technology failure. How does the industry deal with that?
First of all, doing the best to make sure that there are not going to be any failures, and especially with respect to autonomous. With every single failure will find its way all the way up to the headlines. A good example was with the accident that Tesla had, I think it was a year ago, and which was one accident. In that specific day, there were thousands of accident that no one heard about.
A few days ago in the U.S., a Tesla at high speed hit a parked fire truck on a highway. It made a lot of headlines.
Of course, and I think this will continue. So I think this is another huge headache for the industry as a whole, but specific to the OEMs who are trying to push those kind of autonomous vehicles. So safety is something that is, I think, at the moment is the major concern, and there are different levels to address that. First of all, you need to design the car or the architecture in a way that you have the right building blocks and that you ensure that there is going to be a high level of redundancy. Although you did your best, if some parts are going to fail, like you have processors, if one of them will fail, you still need to make sure that the car, at the minimum, will be able to drive itself safely to a point in which there is not going to be any risk for the passenger sitting inside. So this is already at the very early stage of where you start to put your design together. Secondly, a lot of requirements in terms of the suppliers themselves, how they make sure that the quality of the products will meet the highest level of safety. No failures are basically allowed. And on top of that, of course, to design the system and the software in a way that if there is a failure, okay, all the different mechanisms that were kind of designed in will operate to make sure that no casualties in case something failed. But again, one of the biggest challenges is that if you put those elements together, it involves with relatively high cost. And then, the question is eventually someone needs to pay the money and buy the cars. So if it's going to be too expensive, not sure that people are going to buy it. So there are different challenges that needs to be addressed in a very creative way. And lucky for us, we are part of it. So we try our best to enable that.
So that's a great point about cost. So is the obstacle in the future the technology development, or is it the consumer behavior?
I would say it's both of them, but unfortunately, you need to be successful in addressing both at the same time. Okay, so you cannot just say, "Well, I bring you the best-in-class technologies and solution. The car will be very safe, but in order to enjoy this new functionality, whether it's safety related or infotainment related or entertainment related, you will have to pay additional few grants." This is something that will never fly. As always, you need to find the sweet spot between bringing the best technologies at the right cost point. And there are different approaches to that, different business models. By the way, this is one of the reasons why that one of the common perception of these days is that those kind of technologies will first find their way to the industry by fleets like Uber or Lyft, because the assumption is that they are going to be a little bit less cost sensitive. And for that, and anyway, they will see a cost saving by removing the driver, which means that they will be a little bit more open to spend a little bit more on those new technologies. But the challenge is, of course, to bring those advanced technologies into passenger vehicles.
So I know you're global. What markets around the world do you see as sort of being the leading markets where this will go forward?
First of all, in terms of the automakers, we do see that everyone, and it's really like everyone, is looking for a solution to address the challenges that I mentioned, starting from, of course, Germany, all the way to the States, China, Japan, Korea, basically everywhere, because everyone understands that this is the future. This is one aspect. Of course, in terms of adoption, it requires a lot of regulation. It requires a lot of support from government. I think we see a lot of activities in the States, allowing those testing field to open. But there is a joke. Even people believe that the first place that this will happen will be in China, because in China it will be much easier for the government, or even for some of the cities, to declare that all the cars are only autonomous, and this will make the adoption faster, because they will have fewer traditional cars and drivers to deal with. So it's a very good question, and we probably will have to wait to see how well or how fast the adoption is going to be.
So lastly, do you think that that's the way that autonomous cars will come in, instead of being phased in? That a city or an area or a country or whatever says, okay, starting on a certain date, every car has to be autonomous?
I would say for places in which you can actually do that, that makes a lot of sense. That makes a lot of sense, because this will simplify the development of the requirement. Because if you can do it today, the technology exists. Okay, the biggest problem that you have is that you need now to design cars that will have to, unfortunately, still interact with traditional cars and drivers that you don't necessarily know what to expect from them. So there should be a lot of AI design to predict what drivers and cars are going to do. If all the cars are basically fully autonomous, it's very easy, especially when they can communicate with each other. Everything is well predicted. That's easy. If that would be the case, I think that today all the cars would have been autonomous already with the given technologies.
Well, if nothing else, it should be an interesting road ahead. Thank you, Micha Risling, and thank you all for listening to the Voices of the Internet of Things.
Thank you, and drive safe.